Well, Beatles fans, get ready because Liverpool Legends is coming to the Paramount Theater. And here to tell us more is Marty Scott. How are you doing
I'm
today?
great. So excited to be here.
Well, I'm very excited for you to be here as well. So tell me, what is the show like? How is it put together? Tell me all about it.
Well, it's a tribute to the Beatles. It was put together by George Harrison's sister and myself along many moons ago. I met her just a couple months after George had passed away. And I was singing at a Beatle convention in Chicago. She was there as the guest of honor. And she heard me sing, and she thought for some reason we were supposed to meet each other. And we did, and she, pretty spiritual, and she thought we were supposed to be in each other's lives. And so we became really close, and we hung out that whole week together. Literally the next week, she brought me to meet Paul McCartney, and I'm sitting on a couch between both of them. And that's kind of how everything started. Since that moment, my life has never really been the same, and we decided to put a show together. And we started with auditions. We started out from auditions all over the world, and we found 4 likely characters to portray the Beatles. And we kind of were on our way. We ended up opening our own theater in a town called Branson, Missouri. That's how we started. And we were there for a lot of years, playing like 5 shows a week. For years, like thousands of shows in Branson. We had a theater that looked like a giant yellow submarine. And now we're touring full time. So we came here last year, played the Paramount, and it was so cool that we decided to come back and do a repeat performance.
Well, we are very excited to have you here in the Key City once again. So tell me, what is it like to be nominated for a Grammy?
It was kind of honestly just a fluke thing. Like, it was something that I almost didn't even want to be involved in. We got asked to do a project. Louise Harrison was narrating this record. It was mostly Beatle fans talking about what the Beatles meant to their lives. It was called Fab Fan Memories. And they needed music to lay in that wasn't the Beatles, because if they used the Beatles recordings, it was going to cost like $25 billion or something. So they asked us to record the songs for the record, and we were pretty busy. We were in Branson at the time playing 1 million shows, and I was like, do we have to do this? And I ended up recording just a bunch of stuff in my home studio, basically just the songs from our show, and sent it off to the people making the record. And then about 6 months later, I get a random call saying like, hey, what are you guys doing February 20 whatever, you want to come to the Grammys? We got nominated for a Grammy. So we all got to go to the Grammys and do interviews on the red carpet. It was surreal. And it's funny because I really didn't want to do it in the first place, but it ended up being one of the greatest nights of our lives. You know, that year, it was in the spoken word category, which isn't really normally a huge category, but it was up against Betty White, Val Kilmer, and Tina Fey. So it ended up being sort of this big thing. And Betty White won, which is fine. She probably deserved it. But, you know, we got to go to the Grammys and do that whole thing and go to the after parties, and it was a pretty surreal. You know, we've had a lot of things happen to us just because of what we do, and that was one of the best.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
what an incredible story. Now, you talk a little bit about Branson and being back on tour. What is it like being on tour after being in Branson for so many years?
Well, Branson is cool because, you know, we all lived there, so we would do the show and we would be home by 11 o'clock and we didn't have to travel and all that stuff. But what we missed there was kind of seeing the world. So we started touring because of Branson. We would only reach people that came to Branson, which was mostly Midwest people. And since then, we've been, you know, to Japan, we've been to all over South America, England and India. We do these huge shows every year in Mexico City, which we're just about to do, where we sell out these like 10,000 seat arenas like 2 nights in a row. So being on the road has exposed us to, you know, the world that we never would have really got. And we're still in Branson. We do 1 month a year in Branson. We're doing like the month of June in Branson this year. But for the most part, we're doing this full time and getting to meet a lot of nice people, and this is what we do.
Well, I absolutely love it. Now, I'm sure you guys have played some pretty iconic places for sure. What's been your favorite? What's the most memorable?
Well, we got to headline the Rose Bowl, and that was amazing. That was like 60,000 people. And it turned out that the CFO who does that whole thing was a big fan, and the crowd reacted because it's kind of what we do. And he liked it so much that he invited us again. And then he invited us again. So we've done the Rose Bowl like 4 times. And probably the biggest for me is Carnegie Hall. That's when my grandfather finally took notice and said, like, hey, you guys are doing okay, I guess, right? And but honestly, like, we've done a lot, and but we're excited for the Paramount. That place is great. It's got an old school vibe to it, and the sound and lights are great there, which is one of the reasons we're back.
Well, we are very excited to have you back and very honored to have you here in the Key
I'm
City.
honored to be here.
Well,
we love Abilene.
We are so excited that you're back. Now, tell me a little bit more about the show for people that don't know about it. What kind of makes it unique?
So it's a history of the Beatles, and you know, there's a lot of Beatles shows in the world. Ours is pretty unique in that the whole show is narrated by Louise Harrison. So it's a lot of personal touches from her. We kind of go through the years and we go album by album, almost like a documentary, but everything is live. We're basically a rock and roll band, but we're surrounded by some sort of Broadway-esque production. So we start out with the mop top era of the Beatles. They all kind of look like this. And then we go, just like a documentary, we go backwards to the Cavern Club, which is where they started. It was kind of like their Branson, and so that was when they were playing covers and stuff like that. So we do a segment from that, and then we go on and do a segment from the Shea Stadium concert, which was the first stadium concert that any band has ever played. So it's kind of a famous thing. And then we go into the psychedelic era of Sgt. Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour. And then we keep going on to like the later period of the Beatles, like Abbey Road and Let It Be. And then we do some material even after they broke up, because there were some pretty iconic songs even after they broke up, like Imagine and stuff, that are pretty important songs in the world. So it's kind of like a full history of the Beatles, and it's got narration from Louise Harrison, Louise passed away a couple of years ago. So, but she's still a big part of our show, and we're keeping her alive in this whole thing as well.
And she sounds very important to you. I mean, not only to the entire thing, but what was her role and how important?
She helped from the very beginning put this together, and she was such a big part of it that she actually moved to Branson with us when we opened our show there. And I mean, in the early days when we first started out, she was helping us load the truck. She was doing everything. And as we progressed, she traveled everywhere with us. Every time we went international, she came. She made it to the great age of 91. So, she had a great life, and we had a lot of fun. Her and I, it was about a 20-year friendship that we had, So my longest relationship was Louise. But she was a big part, and she still is, because she's still, every day, she's on the screen narrating the show. So it's really cool. And we do a special tribute to her in the show. So, keeping her memory alive, as well as George's and the rest of the guys.
Very special for sure. Now I have to ask you a little bit of a personal question. What is your favorite era, and what do you love the most about the show?
I like, for me, probably the later songs, because for one, I played George in the show. In the later period of the Beatles, George was really kind of coming into his own as a songwriter. Like, he was younger than John and Paul, so on the early records, he was still kind of learning how to write songs. But by the Abbey Road, he had Here Comes the Sun and Something and While My Guitar Gently Weeps. So it's that part of the show, for me, I get featured in it more than the beginning. It's because we're really true to life and how they were. And to me, George had the best couple songs on Abbey Road. So I like that in the show the best. If I'm listening, I'll listen to everything. I'm a fan of John and Paul and Ringo, even Ringo.
Well, very special indeed. Marty, thank you so much for joining me today, and can't wait to see you at the Paramount.
Yeah, we're super excited. April 25th, Friday night. We'll be there.